Hello and welcome. I am Exalite, and this is my podcast. Today, my co host is Jory. So, everyone, welcome, Jory.
Thanks for having me on once again.
Um, Jeremy, I have a real bad feedback. Like, I am about 10 seconds behind. Okay. Okay. So, anyway, let's get on. Today, we'll have moderator Maya. So, everybody say hello to moderator Maya. And we'll have producer Jeremy as well. And we are going to post a link to moderator Maya's own ghost story, which is on my channel. So if you'd like to listen to her after the podcast, of course, please feel free to go listen to Maya's story. If you want to tell us your stories or leave comments, please do so in the comment section. I will not be able to see them generally, so moderator Maya will tell Jeremy if there's something I need to address right away. Also, after the podcast is done, we will have a chance for you to tell us your stories and comments, and we will have a conversation with you about our stories or your stories, whichever you want to do. Tonight, our topic is mine and Jory's true paranormal and supernatural experiences. Sorry. This feedback is weird for me, Jeremy. It's very hard to ignore. Okay, so today we're going to tell you about a couple things. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about everything from UFOs. We're going to tell you about Ouija board experiences. We're going to tell you about the time I was scratched by an entity until it drew blood. We are going to talk about places we lived, experiences we had there, and I'm going to post a picture of a demon in my own apartment next to my own child. And if you'd like to look at it and debunk it, you are my guest. Feel free to do that if you can. So, Jory, how are you tonight?
I am doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing well. I can hear myself twice.
Well, considering how big your ego is, that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, Jeremy, I might have had that. That is my problem. Thank you. Thank you, producer Jeremy, for helping me out. Anyway, Jory, thanks for the comment about my ego.
You're welcome. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, that is why.
I can read between the lines. Co-host, ego check. I get it.
Okay. Now, Jory.
Yes.
Okay, what I'm going to do first. All right, you guys. Do you remember my Come With Me to the Witch's Gate story? Where I took some people and we went to this place called the Witch's Gate in Wichita Falls, Texas. It will be linked, by the way, in the comments. I want to give you an update on that story. During that adventure, I was almost hit by a train. And if you saw that video, you know that. And then we had to go into some property, and we went and checked out and took pictures of the Witch's Gate. And after that, about a month later, I received an email from a detective who told me that I was under investigation for being on somebody's property. And I he asked me to call him. For the record, I didn't know that detectives emailed you, but apparently they do now. And so I called him, and he told me that he appreciated me putting my video on YouTube so that they would have extra evidence of me being on the property. So for future reference, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Anyway, moving along. Jory, do you want to start with the story, or how do you want to do this?
Well, first, I would just like to say that you like to do true crime stories, right?
Yes, I do.
I would love to see an Exit Light true crime story about Exit Light and her narrow escape from prison for ghost hunting.
I could have gone to prison, Jory. That would have been a scary story to tell. I'm not made for prison, Jory.
I don't think anyone is.
I think some people are. I'm not one of those people.
Just saying, a true crime Exit Light story with Exit Light starring Exit Light.
Produced by Exit Light.
Produced by Exit Light.
How I survived prison. Because I was on some land that somebody owned cows on. Do you know that I live in Texas, and if you're on land where somebody owns cows, that right there that's a big offense. They can shoot you right there. So you know, I'm a cattle thief.
Don't mess with the cattle over there.
I try not to. It was a one-time deal. It was a one-time.
Are you sure you're a ghost hunting, or are you a cattle thief?
I refuse to say anything about myself. I take the fifth.
Oh, okay.
All right. Do you want to start?
I can, if you would like me to.
Okay.
So when you approached me about doing like a personal ghost stories thing, the way I approached it in my head was like you and I discussed it yesterday, more of a chronological order kind of a deal. So I'm going to start with what I can at least remember as my first paranormal experiences. I was probably 5 or 6, somewhere in that window. And I can remember we lived in a house where the first story was above ground, and I believe the basement obviously was below ground. And I had a tiny little bedroom in the corner of this basement. And every time I would go to bed, I would always feel like somebody was staring at me. And I was played these cassette tapes that were storybooks, and it was Peter Pan and other Disney tales. And these were the only things that helped me fall asleep, because I would constantly feel like somebody was behind me staring at me, and occasionally I could also hear breathing. And I could never understand at that age why I was feeling that way. Now as an adult, looking back on it, and after hearing stories from you and from family members, you know, it was haunting. But at the time, it was so disturbing to me that I didn't understand why I could feel like I was being watched, hear somebody breathing in my room when there's no pets and there was nobody else there. Mm-hmm. And that house ended up having a lot of experiences to a lot of people in it.
Right.
Which I believe you said that I would come out of my room in a trance or something like that occasionally.
Yeah, well, we had several roommates, and you would scare everybody. You would come out in what you would think was sleepwalking, but there was something above and beyond. Like, you know, kids sleepwalk, people sleepwalk, but you would come out and just stand there and be unmovable we couldn't get you to turn around and walk back in the bedroom. We couldn't get you to wake up. And it was really creepy. And that was the first place that that house was the first place that I ever used a Ouija board in.
See, my uncle also told me that he used the Ouija board in there. I don't know if you two at the same time, but
No.
he also would tell me that he would use a Ouija board in that house also. And as a matter of fact, one of the times he used it was one of my sleepwalking events. I came out while he was using it.
Really?
That's what he said, that he was using it with somebody, maybe a friend or something, and he was asking questions, and then my door opened and I came out. I believe I actually interacted with them, but I cannot recall the words that I said to them. But he said it was one of the scariest things that ever happened because he knew it wasn't me. It was something else.
Well, that was the house that I felt. I was walking down the stairs. It had the stairways where you walk down, there's a landing, you turn and you walk down again. And I was walking down and felt something grab onto my shoulders and shove me down those stairs. That was after the first time that we did. Well, we only did it like once in that house, and that was after we used the Ouija board.
And my bedroom, if I remember, was at the foot of those stairs, right?
Yes, it was I fell down right down to the bottom of the stairs, right next to your bedroom door.
Yeah.
Most of us tried to not spend a lot of time downstairs.
You know what's funny is the majority of my memories of that house is me downstairs watching TV, because it was my bedroom and then it was a room to watch TV, and then the very next room was the pool table room, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so that's where I remember spending a lot of my time just playing with toys and watching video, like VHS tapes and stuff.
Right. There was a pool table, foosball, and there was a jacuzzi back there.
Right, a jacuzzi. That's right. And then you could also have access to the backyard from that area. Too.
Yes, that's right.
There's a sliding door.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, well, I had already had stuff happen before that, but I think that, well, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but we contacted, and was my best friend Cheryl, who just, while we're talking about it, passed away on Friday. We contacted a little boy in that house, and it is the little boy that I feel like I am still taking around with me to this day. It's the shadow figure I see.
Wow.
So I think that house was where things definitely went south.
Yeah, it was definitely where I feel like is my interest in the like the roots of it really began there.
Right. Well, I have another Ouija board story if you want me to link it, because I only used one twice. After that, I wouldn't allow one in my house, although, as we found out later, your uncle did bring one into the house, and I immediately had him.
He would make them.
Yeah, well. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about that house first before I tell you a story about the Ouija board?
No, I don't ever remember seeing anything physical, although I do recall my uncle saying, it might have been you or was it him, that said that they also watched a very bright white ball of light go down the stairs and go into my room.
I think it was him.
It might have been him. But I never saw anything physical. I always just felt like it just felt like this overwhelming feeling that somebody was there with you, really just when I was in bed. And I could never understand why I felt so creeped out, because I had a nightlight, I had a little tape of Peter Pan playing, but I would always still feel creeped out, and I could never understand why.
Yeah, the basement in that house was definitely scary. Well, the whole house had a dark feeling, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about Ouija boards, the second and last time I ever did that, we had been at my mom's house, and we decided we were going to camp out on her property. She had 3 acres, and we were going to camp out, and we had a tent set up, and I had a very close friend die in very tragic and unexpected circumstances. and we decided that we were going to contact her. So I think there was 3 of us using the Ouija board. Yes, there was 3, and I'm very cynical. I always think someone's pushing the oh, Jory, what's it called? The pointer, the planchette.
It's
The
planchette, yeah.
planchette. Yeah, I always think someone's pushing the planchette. If I hear somebody else's ghost story, I'm always cynical. So I understand, by the way, if you're listening, that you are cynical, and I expect people to be. Wait till you see this picture coming up, though. I'm telling you. So, well, I thought somebody was moving the planchette, and it had said, "I am here." And right after that, we decided that we weren't going to do it anymore. I was uncomfortable. I didn't really like the whole Ouija board idea. I know that they sell them in, stores, Walmart, Target, but I stopped using it. We went to sleep. The next day, I woke up and I had a tank top on. And on my back, on my right shoulder, there was a left handprint, not blurry, not something that looked like a left handprint, a left handprint on my shoulder, burned into my skin, bright red, as though I had used sunblock out in the sun for several hours and didn't put it in the outline of a hand on my back. And that really was, for me, what pushed me over the edge, that I don't think Ouija boards are games. I don't think they should be played with. I think that you can open a doorway to something you don't want to open the door to. And so your uncle bringing Ouija boards into the house, even though he had been there and seen that happen, was something that scared me, because our next house, he had some very bad experiences in that house, and we found out later that he had brought the Ouija board into that one too, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That house was creepy as well.
My voice. Yeah. So, do you want to tell the story about the Casa Grande apartments?
Well, I kind of want to backtrack to my childhood again, if you don't mind.
Yeah. No, I don't. Yes, I mind.
So we lived in a house right before we moved for several years. In this house, I had a lot of experiences in too, but the one that I want to talk about, one of the creepiest things that still to this day has ever happened to me was, once again, I don't know why I get stuck in the basement, but I was in my room in the basement.
It's where the trolls go. This is the house, by the way, I just mentioned that my brother had brought the Ouija board in without us knowing.
Mm-hmm. And he had experiences in guess what, the basement.
Yes, he did.
So I was always, whenever I went to that basement, no matter what time of the year, it was always freezing cold. You can turn on the heater, it wouldn't matter. It always felt like I was being watched. I could always hear breathing again. But this particular instance, I was in bed, and I was in bed with my step uncle, and we were talking. And I had the door closed to my room. That way I wouldn't disturb anybody upstairs. And I looked over, and my door was open, and there was a person standing in the doorway, and I thought it was my dad. So I was like, "Hey, Jay, what's up?" And there was no response. And my step uncle was like, well, who are you talking to? And I'm like, well, isn't that JD in the doorway? And he looks, and he sees this shadow figure in the doorway, and he goes, "Dude, that is not my brother." And I was like, well, who is it then? And it just stood there staring at us. It wasn't responding to us communicating to it. And I had asked my step uncle to get up and turn the light on, which was across the room for us. It was a lamp where we have to turn the knob, and he refused. So I had to play superhero, and I crawled across my bed. And even though this thing doesn't have eyes, you could feel its gaze following you. And I stared at it, hoping it wouldn't come after me. And I jumped out of bed, ran to the light, and I was trying to turn the knob, and I couldn't turn the knob, and it finally clicked. And as soon as it clicked, the figure was gone. But I didn't even hear the door open. I just looked over, and it was open, and there was a figure standing there. And we had both seen it. We both witnessed it. So it was one of the downright creepiest things that has ever happened to me to this day.
Was it a solid figure?
Yeah, it was a solid gray figure, which it was tall and it was muscular. So I just thought when I first saw it that there was no lights on. The only lights that were on were outside street lamps that were flooding into the basement. So there was no real light source. Mm-hmm. And when I just figured it was me and my step uncle were being too loud, and my dad came downstairs to hush us. But I had just this instinctual thought that I was being watched, and I turned, and that's when the door was one of those super old creaky doors. So it didn't dawn on me till later that I didn't even hear it open to begin with. Mm-hmm. And once we realized it wasn't my dad, it was just became pretty evident that something was wrong. It was a very solid gray figure, very muscular and very tall. And like I said, once I gathered the courage to turn the light on, it was gone as if it was never there. And I don't even think we slept that night. I think we stayed up all night.
And both of you were seeing it.
Yes, both of us saw it, and my no good, lazy piece of crap step uncle wouldn't get out of bed to go turn on the light and protect me, and he was older than me, and he was supposed to be
I was gonna say he's older than you.
Yeah, he's older than me, and he was the one that was supposed to be like, "Don't worry, man, I got this." Nope, he was under those covers and being like, "No, man, you get it, you get the light, man. I don't want to do it." Yeah, well, don't worry, I got it.
I got you.
Don't worry, man. I'll save our lives.
And I remember you. What's funny to me? Okay, so let me ask you this: if you thought it was a real person, why would you get up and go turn the light on? Didn't you think you were walking towards this person? Or did you suddenly realize that it wasn't a person?
Once my step uncle told me that it wasn't my dad, there was only 3 male figures in the whole house, and 2 of them were in that bed staring at the shadow figure. So once he told me it wasn't my dad, that there was no other person that could have been in that house, because everybody else in that house was a female. And right. Once I really started to look at this figure, because your mind, when it sees a paranormal event happening before it doesn't process it right away. Mm-hmm. Because you go through things in normal everyday life almost like a pattern. When the pattern is broken, your brain has to process that. So when I saw this figure, right away my brain told me, "Oh, that's just your dad, and you're being too loud, and he's going to tell you to be quiet." Yeah. Once I had to realize that was not the situation, and my brain told me, "Okay, now what's going on?" That's when I started to see like there was no facial features to this thing whatsoever. Outside of being able to tell that it was a bulky male and tall, you started to realize there's no discernible clothing that's being worn. Yeah. No hair features. You can't even really see fingers. And like I said, no facial features, no facial hair, no eyes, no nose, no mouth. So once that information was processed into both of our heads, we instantly came to the understanding pretty quick that what we were seeing was a ghost. And that's when fight or flight kicked in, and I immediately told him, "Look, dude, you need to go turn on that light." Because we're sitting in pitch darkness, and it's blocking the only door out of the freaking bedroom.
So did you have to run towards him?
No. So the door. So my bed at the time was up against the wall in the middle of the room.
Mm-hmm.
The door was to my left in the corner, and the light stand was immediately in front of me on the other side of the room. So I didn't have to run to him. I had to just jump off my bed and run across the room to the next wall in front of me where my lamp was.
Right.
So when I was crawling across the bed, I could feel it still staring at me. It was almost like a I dare you to get off your bed kind of a feeling. And I was staring at it like, I don't know if I'm faster than you, but I'm going to try it. And
well, let me
so
ask you. Do you think that could have been the first time you saw the Hat Man?
I would have to say no, because with the Hat Man, I didn't feel fear, and it had discernible clothing. It had the hat and it had a jacket. This figure was just a pure, and it was also mostly black. Little hints of gray, but it might have just been the light. But this was a pure, almost pure gray figure with no discernible features outside of a male outline. And it definitely was not wearing a hat. I think what I was encountering was something else.
Did you know that before that happened with you, that your uncle and his wife had stayed down there, and she was pregnant, and one night I heard him scream downstairs because I was upstairs. My room was upstairs. I heard him scream, a scream that was a legit terrified scream. I heard her screaming. He ran up the stairs, leaving his pregnant wife downstairs, claiming that he had seen a man standing down there, and unfortunately, his wife had a miscarriage that night. After this whole incident happened, and I wonder if it was the same figure.
I would have to say it probably was, because there was definitely a feeling of being scared when encountering this figure, whereas the Hat Man, I didn't feel fear at all. I just was like, oh, there's a cowboy in my room. All right, good night.
Yeah.
Not with this guy. This guy, like, the moment I could process what was going on, I was immediately petrified. And I could fully understand. Although if we're comparing the two stories, I think I handled it pretty well.
Well, I know that you're, really, no kidding, and you were a child. Yeah. He was, which doesn't, I mean, come on. Let's talk about your uncles.
Yeah, all I did was run across the room, and then the figure disappeared, and then I don't know how I got the courage to turn the light back off. I think I turned the light back off. I just remember we didn't go back to sleep, or we didn't attempt to go to sleep the rest of the night after that. But we stayed in the basement, unlike him.
Well, yeah, he was so afraid that he wouldn't go down and get her, and she continued to scream. So I went down and got her, and like I said, she ended up having a miscarriage, related or not related to the incident, but it scared both of them. She totally said that she saw the same thing. It was a man standing there. It was very dark, the figure. It was very scary, and it was very overwhelming. And, that your brother was a jerk for running up the stairs, which was your uncle, I mean, which...
I was going to say, you mean your brother?
Yeah, my brother. It was every man for themselves at that point, and I guess... But we didn't tell you because you were really young. So there was no point in telling you that. Yeah, you're welcome. There was really no point in telling you something that was only going to scare you. As it turned out, it would maybe have given you a warning.
Well, it definitely scared me when I encountered it for myself, Mom.
Hey, every man for themselves.
Yeah, well, that's what my step uncle made it seem out to be. Hey, man, you got this, right? It was funny too, because like we had animals that wouldn't mind being in that room,
Yeah.
but for some reason, I can remember one time I didn't have a light in my bedroom for some reason, and I'd gotten to a point where I don't think I slept in that room anymore, but I would still go down there during the day, and I went down there to play a video game, and I remember seeing our cat at the time come into my room, and I was just sitting there playing a game, and then I heard breathing, very loud, laborious breathing. And I just was like, man, the cat has got to exercise more. This is ridiculous. And I turned around to where I thought would be where the cat is, and there was nothing there. And so I just was like, okay, well, maybe it's hiding. And I turned the game off and I went upstairs, and the cat actually ended up being upstairs. I had never seen it leave the room, but it was upstairs. So whatever I had heard after what I thought was the cat down there, it put goosebumps on me after that. I really did not like being in that bedroom after night.
Well, we've experienced the breathing sound in a couple of houses.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready for my UFO story, guys? All right. I'm going to assume you are. Here we go.
We're ready.
We're ready. Okay. So, and this is funny because a lot of these stories are going to involve my brother, who is now looking like not that great of a witness. Wish maybe I'd had a different witness. So I was working, and I didn't get off till about midnight, and my job was right off of a highway. I would take that highway going towards my house, then turn off the highway, and the highway was elevated as compared to where my house was, my apartment actually. So I went out of where I worked, drove out onto the highway, and I could see that there was a light over in the general direction of where my apartment was. And there was also schools over there, so I thought it could have been maybe like a night game or something. And wasn't concerned or thinking, oh, that's weird. There's a light over there. I drove down the highway, took my turn off the highway, and I could still see the glowing. I couldn't see much else. There was trees. This was in Washington State. There was a lot of pine trees. Couldn't see exactly what was causing it, but I could still see the glowing. And as I drove closer, I realized that it was not only close to my apartment, but very likely coming from my apartment complex, or maybe, that real close to that area. So I got closer, and I had to take a left to go towards the driveway of my apartment complex, and I stopped in the middle of the road. It was a side road. There was my apartment complex on the left side, and on the right side was an old shopping, like strip mall kind of thing. It had a couple of big stores. It had been most of it had been closed down. The big part that had been the big store had been converted to a church. The end, there was like a liquor store and an Italian restaurant. It was just not a whole lot of things there. And hovering above the end of the strip mall was a large black, pitch black, so that it blocked out the scenery behind it, because there was streetlights, really dim streetlights, and it blocked out the scenery behind it, and it had lights going around it that seemed to be rotating, like every other light, every other light, every other light, like that. And I was looking out of my windshield, bending down by my steering wheel, looking out my windshield, looking up at this, and I was thinking that the day before, somebody had come to work and said that they were positive they had seen one of those, they were the new airplane things that were supposed to not be caught on radar. I can't think of what the word is for it. A stealth airplane, a stealth airplane. And they had said I'm positive I saw a black stealth airplane on my way out here to work, and they were on the freeway. I'm positive I saw a black stealth airplane, and it wasn't out of the norm that we could maybe have seen it because where I lived there was an Air Force base. So, but so I'm thinking slowly, apparently, like, is this what he saw? This isn't a stealth airplane. This is much too large, and it's round. And it started to very slowly move towards my direction. And I was right at the entrance to my apartment. So, as I did not want to have a movie about me and my experiences being probed by aliens, I decided to drive into my parking lot as fast as I could over the speed bumps. Boom, 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 boom. Pulled into my parking spot. It's moving right, coming over the end of my apartment complex at this time. I run into my apartment, and in my apartment, there's a front door and like a bathroom on your left and a bedroom behind that. You keep going. There's a kitchen, and there's a living room, and there's a sliding back door. And if you go through the sliding back door, there was a huge courtyard. Huge. So the apartment complex went around this courtyard. I ran in. Your uncle was laying on the couch. I grabbed him by his shirt, picked him up off the couch, said, "Come outside." We went and stood on my back patio, and I was on the ground floor, so it was just a slab. But above me was a cover, and we stood under it, and we looked out, and over the courtyard was this huge, round, black UFO with the lights going blink, 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 blink. The noise was a type of humming that I can't say I've ever heard before or after, but it was a type of humming. But everything else was dead silent. This is in the middle of summer. There was no crickets. There was no dogs barking. There was no traffic noise. It was dead silent. And my brother said, "Holy shit, what the F is that? We should call the police." And we stepped back towards the door because it was so close to us. I can't describe how close this was to us. It was so close. Like maybe like if I had lived in a 3-story building or 4-story building, I could have crawled onto it. It was that close to us. And we stepped back, and then it zoomed away so fast that you could not see it. It just went zoom and was totally gone. His idea was to call the police. I said, "No, thank you." I didn't want to disappear the next day, and we didn't call anybody. I guess we could have called the Air Force Base, but I didn't call anybody. I didn't want to tell anybody. And I didn't tell anybody the story for a long, long time because people tend to say, "Okay, that's crazy." But I feel a little more vindicated now knowing that the United States government had a secret UFO program for several years, and that now recordings are coming out of Air Force pilots spotting UFOs and having the same reaction that we had. And so I feel a little more comfortable telling the story. Of course, I've told people that are close to me, told them the story, but I know for 100% fact that what I saw was a UFO. And I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I know people won't believe it. That people are skeptical. I, hear all the time. on my channel. The people say, I need to see it. I need a proof. I need to touch it. And I get it. I feel like that too about things. I get that. I can't give you the proof, but I can tell you that there's no doubt, 100% in my mind, that I saw a UFO, and my brother, the chicken, also saw the UFO, and it was a very, very real experience that I will never forget.
When he tells the story, he tells it pretty much the exact same way you tell it as well. And he has the same fear tones in his voice. So to me, it's a pretty authentic story. Like you both tell it exactly the same way. You both have the same surprise and fear and shock and awe. And yeah, I think it's a pretty cool story.
I think it's a pretty cool story. I feel very privileged and lucky to have seen something like that. I know that other people, have stories where they have seen something like that, and then they have a whole lot of traumatic stuff happen. Mine was just simply seeing it, and I've called for years. I would call him and go, "I'm telling somebody about the UFO story. Tell it, tell it." I want them to hear your version because,
Yeah.
like you said, he tells it from the part where I picked him up off the couch.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good because he was a grown man. um, so let's see. Do you want to tell what story do you want to tell next? Do you want to talk about the apartments in Casa Grande?
Yeah. So when we first moved to Casa Grande, we stayed in an apartment complex for a few months while my dad was finishing building our house. And I know the stuff that happened there happened to mostly just me and my sister Maya. And this story that I want to tell actually happened to me and your brother, my uncle. Once again.
Yeah.
Still in all the glory.
Hey, I have a question. Maybe it was him bringing all the crap.
Well, what's funny is, okay, we'll get back to this story in just a second. So when we lived in Chandler, Arizona for about a year, he was seeing some girl and they moved into an apartment together. Remember that?
Yes, I remember.
Okay, so I would go over there sometimes because they wanted me to try and be friends with the girl's daughter because we were the same age. So I would go over there sometimes, and anytime I would go over there, everything was fine. And then one day I went there, and the moment I walked into his apartment, I felt sick, just excruciatingly sick. My head was pounding. I wanted to puke. I wanted to curl up into a ball and die. And we were going to go see a movie, I think. And the moment I walked out of that apartment, the moment I was outside, it all went away. It was gone. I wasn't sick. My head was fine. I didn't want to curl up and die. And I found out that prior to this event...
Jory, can I stop you for a second and tell you something?
Okay.
My nose just started gushing blood while we were talking. Yeah.
Are you okay?
I'm okay, but Jeremy and Maya ran out here. I sent them a text and I was like, I need help. My nose is gushing blood. I don't have anything. And they both ran out here to watch me bleeding. Yeah. Oh, that's odd timing.
Okay. I was wondering what the noises I was hearing in the background were.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you okay?
I'll let you know if I start getting scratches. But yeah, so far so good.
Okay,
Just bloody noses.
Okay, so anyways, I found out that prior to us moving to Arizona, my grandma passed away. Yours and my uncle's mom. And he had created a Ouija board in that apartment to contact her. And instead, he ended up contacting an entity that he called, I believe it was Mr. Black. And after he contacted this entity, a lot of weird, crazy stuff started happening to him. And right after the crazy, weird stuff started going on in that apartment was when I visited him at that apartment. And then I had the excruciating, I just can't be in here. I'm sick. I'm going to puke and die feeling. So I think that a lot of the ghost stories, especially when I'm around my uncle, are because of him.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he was trying to make sense of things, especially after Grandma died. And his way of doing that was with the Ouija board. And if anybody out there wants to believe anything I say from this point forward, don't mess with a Ouija board unless you're with somebody who truly knows what the hell they're doing. It's not the board, it's you as a person.
Yes.
You can inexplicably open a doorway to something that will ruin your life. And so I say, do not communicate with spirits unless you can find somebody who is a professional. I don't even know if you can use that term really, but at least a professional in that subject, or it will haunt you literally. And trust me, the sick feeling I got because my uncle wanted to mess around with a Ouija board was not cool. So anyways, back to this apartment. It was Christmas time, and everybody was asleep except for me and my uncle. And we had all of our Christmas decorations out. I think we had just got them out of the boxes and put them out, but there was no batteries and nothing was plugged in yet. And we were talking, and we had the fire on in the chimney. And so we were standing there or sitting there talking, just reminiscing about where we lived prior to Arizona. And I started to notice that as the fire was dwindling, it was forming a face of a man. And I thought it was just a cool effect. Like, wow, that's pretty cool how the embers are shifting into the face of a man. And my uncle thought it was pretty cool too. And then all the Christmas decorations in the living room turned on. Turned on. So we had the fake candles that would turn on if you had batteries in them. They turned on, no batteries. The Santa Clauses and the Mrs. Clauses that would move if you plugged them in or had a battery in them.
Batteries, I still have them.
Yeah. They were moving, and they weren't plugged in or had batteries in them. And we said nope, and we were in the living room. So that was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, a tiny little living room with a kitchen. The bathroom and my bedroom were down the hallway, and then after you take a right, the master bedroom was there. We ran to the left bedroom. That was where me, Mike, and the girls had to stay. And we slammed that thing real quick, and we just sat there not knowing what the hell just happened, because none of those electronics had batteries or were plugged in. We literally had just taken them out of their boxes. And for them to turn on, like, it was like, I wouldn't say it was scary, it was cool. Like, when you think about it, it's so cool, because you hear a lot of those stories about, oh, this electronic came on and there was no reason for it. I actually can say I've seen something like that. Right. Nothing was plugged in, nothing had a battery in it, and it turned on. And it was just ironic, at the same time we started to see the shape of a man's face start to form in the burning embers of the fire. And go ahead, Mom, what were you going to say?
That was the same apartment that your sister would see the man walk down the hallway.
Well, yeah, I had an experience where I was in the living room, and there was enough experiences going on in the apartment where I knew it was haunted. And I don't think I told you this part of it, but I wasn't using a Ouija board or anything like that. I just sat down and was like, look, we all have to live here. Why don't we live in peace? If you need to talk, just talk. Let me know what's going on with you, because this is creepy. Well, nothing outwardly presented itself to me, but I do remember getting the creeps and running to the bedroom, and when I closed the door, I heard footsteps lead up to the door and then slightly walk past and then turn around and come back to the door and then stop, and then there was nothing there after that.
Really?
So I never saw a man that my sister saw, but I definitely was experiencing poltergeist activity for sure in that apartment.
Really?
Which is funny because several years later, I moved into those apartments. As a matter of fact, right across from where we lived, I moved into a set of an apartment with my now wife. And I had made a joke to her when we were touring the apartment complex. Oh, I lived here with my family and it was haunted. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not just specific to what door you're behind, because what we experienced in our apartment was definitely, to me, it was more scarier because we were actually seeing physical apparitions.
Really?
Yeah. My wife her and I had a disagreement, and she was out in the living room and I was asleep. Mm-hmm. And
oh, she got the couch.
Well, she chose the couch.
Oh, sure.
And it was more of a, I'm mad at you and I don't want to be anywhere near you kind of a disagreement. Hey, it happens.
Yeah.
So she was out there watching TV and I was in bed and the door was closed. And she was waiting for me to come out and, do the apology thing. So the door opened and she saw me come out. So she was like, okay, here we go. She was getting herself ready. Well, she saw me walk past her and go into the bathroom that we had because we had a two bed, 2 bath apartment. Mm-hmm. So she was like, okay, fine. I'm just going to wait for him then. So she was watching the TV. And then after a little while, she was like, he's not coming out. And she turned around to see that the bathroom was completely dark. And there was nobody there. Mm. So once she realized what was going on, she turned off the TV, ran to the bedroom, saw that I was still in bed, knocked out asleep, and the fight was over. She had that door closed, she was in bed, and she was clamped onto me like a lobster. And I had a couple of weird things that would happen, but it wasn't until one night where her, myself, and a friend of ours were in my office and we were playing video games and working on the computer. And as the two of them were playing a video game, I was on the computer looking up some information, and I could see somebody in my peripherals pacing my kitchen. And it was, once again, a tall black figure pacing my kitchen. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was my friend. That was my initial reaction at first. But I turned around and I saw that he was still sitting there with my wife playing a video game. And I turned my head back to the computer, and in my peripherals, I could still see somebody pacing my kitchen. So the moment I turned my head to look, the pacing was gone, the figure was gone.
Really?
And I turned to them both and I said, there's somebody in the apartment. Because I still didn't want to believe that it was a ghost. I thought somebody had broken into the apartment. I said, there's somebody in the apartment. And my friend is not afraid of a fight, so we both got up quick and went into the kitchen. And my apartment, even though it's a 2 bed, 2 bath, was very tiny. We got up. No one was in the kitchen. No one was in the bathroom. No one was in the living room. No one was in the master bedroom. So what I saw was something that was also imitating me to my wife. Mm. And I lived there 2 separate times, not in the actual same apartment. They were just right across the courtyard from each other. But both times I lived in that apartment complex, there was something weird that happened to me. And I thought, well, thinking back on it now, it's pretty cool. And I think it does tend to provide some, maybe not physical proof, but some kind of a proof that the paranormal exists. Because I lived in the same apartment complex, but in 2 different parts. several years apart, and I
Right.
still had paranormal activity happen to me in that same area. So I
Right.
find that pretty weird.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't move back there again. I'm just saying.
Well,
Uh,
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I learned my lesson.
okay, well, you lived in that apartment and we moved.
Hmm.
Um, we moved. You stayed in Arizona. We moved to
I stayed
Texas.
behind. Yep.
So I'm going to tell the story about the apartment we moved into right after we left Arizona. And in this apartment, there was a break in the TV. You know how the news comes on and says, that there's something urgent or whatever, and stand by, and they're going to talk about it. Okay, well, that happened, but it was late at night. It was, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock at night. So I called your sisters in and I sat them down and I said, something historical is going to happen. So let's watch. And as we were sitting there, I was sitting in a recliner. I had a shirt on and I had a sweatshirt on. And I felt a burning sensation on my side by my ribs. On my side, my ribs. And it was burning. And I finally got to the point where I said, ow, something is burning me. And I pulled it up and I had your sister look. And there was 3 scratches on my side. And she said, did you scratch yourself? And I said, no. And as we were talking, 3 more scratches were being produced right in front of us, right across the first 3. And they were causing blood drops to come out of the scratch. I proceeded to run into the bedroom where your dad was, and I lifted my shirt and showed him that I was being scratched again, and blood drops were coming. We went in the kitchen, and I was being scratched again. So 4 different times, all in threes. The last 3 times were drawing blood. Like, when you get a cat scratch and it's not deep enough to make the whole thing bleed, but just have blood drops kind of come out of parts of it. It was doing that, and you could see it happening. You could see the scratches scratch. And that was the scariest paranormal experience I've ever had happen. Because at this point, it was something intent on injuring me. And it was doing it in front of my children and my husband, of course, but my children being the main, concern about this, obviously. We made our own holy water. We were like, praying over this water, put salt in it, walking around the house flicking this water. And I had a friend who brought over tiny little crosses that had been blessed. And I hid them throughout the apartment. A couple of days before that had happened, the people next to us had moved in, and we didn't know them, but they had taken salt and drawn a salt line outside of their apartment, on all of their windows, in front of their door, and suddenly, and we had noticed it and thought, well, that's interesting way. And by that night, we had done the same thing. We had put salt out there in front of our apartment, our doors, our windows, sills, everything had salt on it. Not long after that, we were playing a game, and I had reached my hand out to roll dice, and something moved over my hand, and it wasn't foggy or black or smoky like you would see in some hokey movie. It looked like the heat coming off of a freeway or a highway, or the hot pavement. It was just a distortion. It went over my hand, distorted the view of my hand, and drew scratches across my hand. And at that point, your dad stood up and said, "We're getting the F out of this house. That's it. I've had enough. We're getting out of this house." And we did end up moving, not then, but a while later, we did move out of that apartment because things kept happening where we couldn't. Oh, we had 2 small children sleeping in a bedroom. The door was shaking. He went to go in the door. There was resistance on the doorknob. He couldn't get in the door. And when something is keeping you from reaching your children, scratching you, and leaving blood, we had been laying in bed one night, and the bathroom sink, the water turned on as hard as it possibly could. And in that case, my bed faced the bathroom, and it faced the mirror behind the sink. And I was too afraid to even look into the bathroom because I didn't want to see. I was afraid to see what I would see in the mirror. Your dad heard it. He ended up going to turn the water off, and it was resistant. That building was built in 1968, which was not as old as the house that we had lived in, that we were talking about earlier with the basement. But a lot of people had gone through there. A lot of military people had lived there, a lot, because it was very close to a military base. A lot of older retired people lived there. The people upstairs from us had glasses fly off of their table, land on the floor, and shatter. It's a very dark place, but to be scratched, to know that there's an entity that, and especially, I mean, everybody knows, right, that the threes are so stereotypical that I would be cynical. If I was hearing the story, I understand people being cynical, but I had a lot of people witness the scratches come up and blood come out of me. And that, I think, is the epitome. And I had been thrown downstairs. And the stairs thing didn't scare me as bad as the fact that I was being scratched and bleeding in front of my children, and then did not have access to my children. That is an apartment that I would actively warn people about moving in to. I think it's dangerous. I think there's something very dark there. It wasn't the typical, black shadow figures that we talk about that are harmless. There was something very dark. And when I moved out of there, I took those crosses with me and put them on here because I didn't want whatever it was to follow me to this place. Because I don't think that moving out of a place keeps the spirit there and then you just move on. I think they can go with you. And unfortunately, I also think that if you react and you show fear, it can get worse. And so our reaction to the scratches probably didn't help because it was a scary thing to see for everybody involved. Do you know what I mean? And that brings me to the picture that we took in that apartment of the demon standing behind your sister. So let me ask Jeremy. Jeremy, are you going to put that picture up for the people to see? Okay. So you are all seeing this picture. That is my daughter sitting on my couch in my apartment, what used to be my apartment. And there is something that can only be described in my mind as paranormal or supernatural, standing behind her, looking directly at her. And it's not something that is warm and fuzzy. It's a dark, scary picture. Do you know what picture I'm talking about, Jory?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now.
Yeah. And so if someone somebody wants to tell me that they can debunk that picture and say it's something else, feel free to do that. Because I've never had anybody do that yet.
You know, I'm looking at this picture, and now I'm sorry to interrupt you. And maybe you can help me out with this. So there's a picture frame behind my sister in this photo.
Yes.
So very clearly we can see this vaporous figure next to my sister, but I don't know if there's a reflection, but it kind of looks like there's a head and shoulders figure outline in the frame of this picture.
The picture behind. Okay, the picture behind the figure?
No, the picture behind Madison.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Oh
like
my gosh. Oh, wait. No, I'm looking at that same picture right now. It has that.
That's like that.
I'm looking. Yes, it is like that. Thank you.
Okay.
Because you scared me. Yes, it is like that. I had never even noticed that before.
Well, I just wanted to make sure because it kind of looks creepy. But if the picture's like that, then okay. I just wanted to clarify that because people seeing this picture could also see that and be like, "Well, there's not just one ghost, but."
Well, it actually looks quite different now than it does in this picture.
There's this ring that you have. It looks like you have a table set up behind this couch.
Yes.
And it looks like there's a fogginess as the ring meets this black outline in the picture frame. Like it's being blurred out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it sure does. And I'm looking at that painting right now because I have it up. And it doesn't look like that, Jory. It looks much... The shape is...
I mean, is Maya and Jeremy seeing the same thing? Do they see it?
Okay, Jeremy, I'm going to send this picture to you so you can put it up, okay? Okay, I'm going to send it on your phone. Is that okay? No, the one I just took right now. Okay, so I'm going to send this picture. And you can see what it looks like right now. It's a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit different. And I'll wait for him to tell me when that's put up so you can compare. In the meantime, it looks to me like some sort of a tall bird sort of thing looking at Madison. Its face facing her. I don't know if those are wings or
it kind of looks to
horns.
me like a figure is walking out of that area, that room, with its arms lifted towards her. Like you can even see hands with fingers. And it looks like it's walking. To me, I can. To me, it looks like it has hands with digits. And it's like reaching for her.
Ugh.
Yeah, you can even tell on its left leg that it might be wearing some kind of a boot. Like there's a very definitive shiny metallic object on its leg that would resemble maybe a boot. It's right at the knee line on its left leg. You can see it's wearing pants. Like it looks like it's wearing pants, and its waist even looks like it might even be wearing like a long coat.
I can see the long coat thing idea behind. I can see that. That is weird.
And then like the sleeves, like you can see to me you can see the sleeves come down and the cuffs, like the cuffs just stop just short of the wrists.
See, to me this looks like a bird type of a figure, that what's coming towards her is a beak. And then what's beside it would be wings or horns or ears or something.
See, I can't, for me, I don't, like where the head should be is just kind of a blur. But for me, I feel like I see a man in a long coat.
Oh, God, I see that.
Yeah.
Yes, I see what you're seeing.
Yeah, he's wearing pants. His left leg looks like he might be wearing some kind of a boot. He's
Oh,
got a very long coat on with the sleeves, and the cuff stops before his hands. And his hands have little digits like he has fingers.
okay. I've never looked at it and seen that version of it. Do you see where I see? If you see it from the, I'm seeing that what's coming out where you think is an arm is a beak pointing towards Madison's eyes.
I don't see a beak. I see hands. I see a man, but where his head should be is blurry.
Yeah. Whoa. That's so weird that we can see two different things. And I can see what you're saying, Jor. Sorry. Yeah, that is so weird. I've never seen it like that before.
Yeah. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like a solid figure, with the exception of a blurry head. It's definitely to me, it feels like a detailed long coat. I feel like you can see the ruffles of pants, like work jean pants, and then something metallic near the knee, like maybe a boot or maybe even a knee brace.
Hmm.
Either way, it's really creepy.
What is the black thing that looks like it's on her arm that connects to that figure?
Kind of just looks like the table, maybe, but oh, those are her pants. Never mind. I was like, wait a second, there's something that looks like it goes across her legs, but it's just her pants.
Yeah, see, it's not the table in the back. It goes from her arm towards the figure.
I don't know. That one, I don't know. It kind of looks like it's a part of the background, like the chairs or something.
Well, I can totally see what you're seeing, but I see it as facing her, as something flapping its wings, and a bird's face looking at her, directly at her face. That's weird. Now that you said that, I can see what you see.
Yeah,
I
I'm
wish you could
having
see how I see it.
yeah, I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time trying to see it as a bird figure because my brain is fixated on it
Yes.
as a figure of a man.
Yeah, if you could just like block out the rest and see the part pointing at her. Okay? Do you see what comes towards her? Where you see that as an arm? Look at that as the top of that arm. Up towards the head is an eye. And going down towards her is a beak. I
I
know
can
it's
kind of see
hard
it
once you
now.
see it.
I
Once you
can
see it
kind of
one
see
way, it's
it.
hard.
I can see what you're saying. There's like a definite like a weird little swoop that kind of looks like it's a possible beak with a
Yeah.
black eye.
Yes.
But when I get away from that detail and I pull away, it goes right back into a long coated figure.
See, when I pull away, it goes right back into the bird for me. So how strange is that?
Well,
Whatever it is,
I
it's
guess
not
you
supposed
can
to be
leave it up
there.
to the people in the chat also.
Yeah.
Let them decide what they want to see.
Yeah, I want you guys to take a look at this picture and you tell me, first off, do you see a man in a jacket or do you see a bird? Secondly, I can guarantee you there was neither a bird or a man in a jacket standing there.
I can see the bird object, or I can see the bird detail now.
And okay, Jeremy, can you put the picture up of JD sitting in the exact same position, in the exact same? We took it right afterwards to show. Okay, I'm gonna send it to you. Hold on a second. So we did a comparison photo to to show you what it looked like 2 seconds after we had her stand up and take it again. No, I don't have any. I don't. I'm sorry about that, Jeremy. And I'm sorry, you guys. You can't hear me talking. Jeremy and I have a conversation.
Look at the shadow behind here. Be up here on the wall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And if you can see that picture, it also seems to go up against, if you look behind it, up towards the wall and up, you can see the shadow up there too. Jory.
Which one? The shadow figure itself?
Yeah, if you can, there's behind it is, it's on the, seems like almost like there's something along the wall in the corner there too.
That shadow that's on the wall?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that might be Madison's shadow?
No.
No?
No. Because it's
Okay.
not, because there's no light on the wall. The light would have to be where we're sitting taking the picture to have a shadow back there. I don't know. You guys tell me. What is that? And Jeremy, can you tell me when you put the other picture up? Okay, so there's another picture up right now for comparison. And we had her move and took that picture, and there's nothing there.
So in this picture, there's still that. It must just maybe be a part of the picture because that shadow outline is still in that picture frame.
Yeah, that's true. And you can see that. Go ahead. Yes. Yes. Jory, if you would notice that thing that you said about touching her arm and how it looked like it was part of the table, if you notice that picture of JD in there, it's not touching his arm. There's nothing there.
I can see that.
And that is gone in that picture. So it looks like that figure is touching her. And she was playing with what's that thing called? Oh, Jory, I'm gonna sound like an idiot. What's she playing with?
A tablet?
No, it's the little ones that fold. You have a 3D one.
Oh, the DS?
Yeah, she's holding the DS, and you can see in the next picture where your dad is that the DS is on the couch because we had had her put it down to take the other picture, and there is nothing on his arm or even behind him that looks like it would be touching his arm.
Is it weird that I have a very strong case of deja vu right now?
Do you?
Yeah, I feel like I've done this before.
Really?
This exact same thing right now that we're doing.
Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, anyways. Weird.
Okay, so you guys tell me. Take a screenshot of that picture. Debunk it. Tell me what you think it is. And Jory, do you want to tell another story?
Yeah. So there was a local legend out here called the Casa Grande Domes, which we've talked about a little bit before in the podcast, and you have a story about them on your channel.
Yes, I do. Moderator Myra will link it.
So Ghost Adventures also came out here as well. There was a short-lived Jack Osborne show called Haunted Highway, and he investigated the site as well, and he feels like he completely debunked this area of land as just being that people are confusing a haunting with homeless people that squat out there, which I will say for the record, there was evidence of homeless people squatting out there. I won't take that away from him.
Right.
But with that being said, Ghost Adventures went out there and they caught some pretty incredible footage that no homeless person could have caused. And in my own personal experiences of being to that site numerous times, I have bore witness to things that are definitely not homeless people causing it.
And for the sake of openness, when Ghost Adventures went out there, you helped work on that particular show.
Yes. I have a family member who works with animals, and they contacted her to use her animals for B-roll footage shots. She had my father-in-law call us and ask if I knew about them being in town, and I said no, and she invited me along to help her out with the filming of the episode. So I went out with her, and the producers of the show allowed me to help them film B-roll shots of the show. And I actually got to meet on that day Jay Wasley, and I was able to show him areas of where I had paranormal experiences where they also set up X cameras to film some of their footage. So yeah, it was a pretty fun experience. I had a good time.
Good.
But I digress. So when I first heard of this place, it was a local legend based off of everybody. I think every little town has it about, oh, this is where people do satanic worshiping, and people go out there and do drugs and worship Satan and drink. And you can definitely go out there and see that there's a lot of drinking and partying that goes on. But it was one of those local legend things, and I said, okay, I'll go out and check it out. And I've been there dozens of times.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go out there, especially at night, it's very, very, it's out almost in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of on the border of town and the Indian reservation that we have out here. It's very isolated, very quiet, not a lot going on out there. Not a lot of people live out there. But you attribute that to where it's at in the desert. And then the crazy stuff starts happening to you. You see shadow figures walking around you when you know it's only you and whoever else you're with there. You hear footsteps that you shouldn't hear. Now I should let these people know, and if you've seen the Ghost Adventures episode, then you'll know the way these domes were built was that they echo sound. So it's almost kind of like being in Friday the 13th, or I think it was Friday the 13th when you hear the
yeah.
That's what it sounds like when you walk into these domes. There's an echo effect, so when you walk, your footsteps go and you can hear these sounds in other domes, and when you investigate, there's nobody there. Now this is where Jack Osborne, after finding evidence of people squatting, would say, oh, well, this is just squatters. Well, these people are afraid of the people coming out here and ghost hunting. They disappear. They're just going to wait for you to be gone. Because in the entire time I've ever been to the domes, there was never once where I ran into a homeless person, ever. They're going to wait for you to leave. They don't want to be involved.
Anybody I've ever talked to that's gone out to the domes has always said that they saw evidence of the people out there, squatting out there, but they never saw one there. So to back that up, I've never heard anybody say they ran into anybody homeless out there. But no, I mean, there was proof that they were there. They just didn't see them.
No, there's very, very definitive proof. It's hard to miss, but you never see them, either because they're in town picking up supplies, or they're hiding in the desert waiting for you to leave because they don't want to interact with you. Mm-hmm. They're just as afraid of you as you would be of them. So I would have to say, as far as the scariest thing that ever happened to me, there's two things that happened to me, and one of the stories I'm actually going to wait to tell until I tell you guys about this church. So I'll just focus on this one particular story. It was a group of us, and we actually got brave and actually decided to bring out a camera. And, I almost forgot. I also have another... It was a story before I even got to the domes. We were going to the domes, and the domes sit on this long dirt road, and it stretches from the highway. And it was going to be a big group of people, and I was with my then girlfriend in her vehicle as we were driving. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about when I say this, but you know when you're in a ghost movie and when a ghost talks to you, it has that ethereal voice, like an echo before it hits you. Okay, so just picture that, and a voice in between her and I saying, "Go away."
Right.
In a very ethereal sounding voice, and it scared us so bad that she slammed the brakes and we fishtailed on the road. And we asked each other, "Did you hear that?" Which we obviously both did. We drove to the domes, told our friends, we just got a warning and we're leaving, and we left them there. But anyway, so there was a big group of us, and we had a camera, and we were going to ghost hunt. We were going to try and capture physical proof, because one of the stories that everybody in town talks about is there's this 12-foot black figure that walks on top of the domes, and you can see it walking in the desert, and it was actually talked about on the Ghost Adventures show. So we wanted to catch proof of it. And there's 4 different domes. The first one is shaped like a UFO, and then there was one that we called the fire dome because the very inside of it was fire damaged. We were walking up to the fire dome, and I was in front, and I was there with my uncle and my group of friends, and they were behind me. And I got up to the entrance of the fire dome, and to my left, I heard footsteps, and I was like, "Oh, somebody else is out here." So I told everybody, "Hey, hold on, there's somebody else here." And everybody came to a stop behind me, and they were coming from the left side of the fire dome. And it's all gravelly dirt out there with a few exceptions of concrete slabs. So the footsteps came up to me. I heard them walk to me, but there was no one physically there walking up to me. And everybody there was a witness to this. And it was one of the few times that I can honestly legit say that I had what I will now refer to as an Uncle Mike moment, and I hoofed it. I ran out of there as quickly as I could because I wasn't expecting it so soon. I had what was it the Ghost Hunters had? The run, dude, run moment in season 1?
Yeah.
And I hoofed it. It was like when my friends tell the story, they're like, one minute you said there was footsteps in front of you, and the next minute you were at the car on the other side of the property. They were like, it was like watching a cartoon character run. There was just a cloud of smoke. You were gone. But it was just so soon. Like I thought we would have to coax it out, and we would have to warm it up and get it used to us. And it greeted us. It was like, "Hey, bud, how you doing?"
So you had that meme, that moment of that meme you sent me the other day about the ghost chasing you. About the ghosts chasing you.
Oh, you mean when you hear when you're in a haunted house and you hear somebody licking their lips behind you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I had one of those moments.
Yeah.
And on a related note, like these stories are starting to come to me now. My friend and I, the same friend that was in the apartment with me when I saw the shadow figure pacing my kitchen. We were always going to these domes in groups of people, and one night we were bored, and we said, "You know what? Let's just you and me do it. Like it's just never been like the two of us, or it's just never been, these numbers been so small." And we were like, "Okay, let's do it." And we got to a point where we were pros at this. Like we had flashlights, we had everything we needed to be able to see and do what we needed to do. And it was a very calm, warm night. We live in the desert, so you can imagine it wasn't cold outside at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we drove out to the desert where the domes are. So we wouldn't be detected by anybody. We actually parked on the other side of the road from the domes, and we parked in the desert behind some foliage. And the moment I got out of the car, it was windy, super windy outside. Like to the point where my clothes felt like they were going to fly off of me. And I thought it was weird that when I was in town, it was dead calm. And the moment we go out to the domes, the wind is just overpoweringly trying to push me back in the car. It almost felt like. But we sucked it up and we went forward. And we crossed the street, went over to the domes, and we barely made it on the property. Barely made it on the property. And we both saw the same thing at the same time. A white figure came out of what we call the fire dome, and it stopped just at the entrance of it, facing us. And once again, my brain was trying to be logical, and I thought it might have been somebody out there with a flashlight. And so we both stopped immediately, and I said, "Oh, there's somebody else here," and he goes, "No, dude, that's not a person." And I'm looking, and sure enough, it was radiating its own light. It wasn't carrying a light source. It had its own light. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a very tall figure at all. I would say maybe just a little bit taller than a child, like maybe a preteen or a young teenager size. And to my right, in my peripherals, I could see a black figure kind of flanking us. And we were just in awe. The wind is whipping around us. You can't hear anything but the wind. We're just staring at this white figure giving off its own light. It's illuminating the dome. And I can see this black figure in my peripherals getting closer to us. And we were barely on the property, and I had to turn to him and say, "We got to go, man. We got to go." And we hoofed it. We ran right back to his car, jumped in it. He blazed out of there so fast. Mm-hmm. And we were quiet the entire trip back into town because we had to digest what we just saw. We barely were on the property. We didn't even get a chance. We didn't, and it's funny now that I'm putting these two stories together. I had the same thing with the footsteps. I barely had a chance to get there when, yeah. Oh, okay. Give me 1 second here.
Sorry. Jory's mic was scratching.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we barely had time to be on the property when something paranormal happened to us, and then we got back to we had been hanging out at a friend's house. We got back to that friend's house, and we get out of his car, and there's no wind. It's still, and it's back to being hot again, and it just felt like that was the perfect night to go to the domes. Something was going on.
Right.
And now that I'm like starting to really think about it, because even the voice happened to me and her before we even got to the property. Like all this paranormal experiences were happening to me before we could really do anything.
Right.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Isn't it weird if you look back on a story and you're like, oh, I see.
Well, I've had so much stuff happen out there to me that, like, now that I can actually sit down and tell these stories and not just tell one individual story, it's now starting to be like, oh, I'm seeing a pattern here now that I'm telling this. I barely get to the property and I'm already having something happen to me, which tells me something didn't want us there to begin with and somehow knew we were there to begin. Like, it knew it was there before we knew we were there.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's interesting now to think about that. Huh.
Right. Well, do you want to tell us the Witches Cemetery or the Haunted Church?
I'll tell the church and then I'll tell the cemetery after that. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's fine. I want to add something about the cemetery before you start, but go ahead.
Before the cemetery story?
Yeah.
Okay. So another local legend living here in Casa Grande was about this church that's it's right off one of the main roads here. It's very easy to get to, and it's in town. Back in the origins of the town's history, there was a very bad accident that had happened where several children had died just down the road from this church. And the first time I was taken to this church, I'll never forget it. You walk
Where is
in.
this?
It's in town. I can't tell you. I don't know the road because the road it's the sign for it's kind of faded with time. But for your perspective, Mom, it's down the road from the Walmart in town, heading towards the I-10.
Right. Oh. Oh. Okay.
It's in
Oh.
that kind of abandoned, deserty area between like Cracker Barrel and Walmart.
Right. Okay.
So you walk into this abandoned church, and I would have to say the max capacity of that church when it was in use was probably 20, 25 people, not very big. But people had converted it into a weird little memorial to people who have passed away. There was lit candles. Every time I went to this place, there was lit candles and pictures of people, I'm assuming who were passed, all over the wall. It was like a little shrine dedicated to these people. And it's an abandoned church that was not in use. It was always so creepy.
That's weird.
But the experience I'm going to tell you, and to everybody that's listening, I know this is going to sound really weird. I know it's going to sound really weird. And if it didn't happen to me, I would probably be skeptical. So just please keep it in mind. It's going to sound weird.
Is it going to sound weird?
It's going to sound weird.
Okay.
So one night, a friend of mine and my girlfriend at the time went to this church. And I had a very weird taste of friends I've always had. So the male friend considered himself to be kind of a new age druid person. Mm-hmm. And my girlfriend at the time considered herself to be a Wiccan. So when we get out of the vehicle, they kind of go off and do their own thing. And it kind of just leaves me alone. So I'm just on the outside walking around, just looking out at the desert, looking at the church.
Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Good night, Meerkat. Thank you for staying up really late. I know it's very, very late where you are. I really appreciate it. Go ahead.
Okay. Good night, Meerkat. Thank you.
He's watching from the UK, so it's like 4 o'clock, almost 4 o'clock in the morning where he is.
Yeah, go get some sleep, dude.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck after all these stories we told. So as I'm walking by myself, I start to feel very lightheaded and dizzy. And I have this moment where I feel like I come out of my body and I see myself looking at my physical form. And my body falls to the ground onto my knees. And I look up, and the church is on fire. And I can see people inside the church. Not a lot, but some. And I'm pulled away from the fire to see this black figure staring at the church on fire. And it has a knife in its hand. And I feel very weak and helpless. I can't move. I can't do anything. I just see this church on fire. And the black figure turns and it looks at me. And then it starts walking towards me. And I don't even remember having the ability to react to it. I just remember staring at it. And it gets up to me and it pulls the knife back. And the next thing I remember is I'm being dragged back to the vehicle that I came in by my girlfriend at the time and my friend. And I can hear them asking me if I'm okay, but I'm just not actually there. Like the lights are on, but nobody's home. Mm-hmm. They drag me back to the truck. They're trying to get me into it, and I can feel myself walking back towards the church. And they grab me, throw me back into the truck. and they take off. And this was supposed to be, we were supposed to be brave and do a dual threat ghost hunt. We were going to start at the church and end at the domes. So for some reason, they decided it was still a good idea to go to the domes. But I'm not responding to them the entire drive. I just remember being so drained and tired and out of it. I just couldn't form words to communicate to them. So we go to the domes. They have to pull me out of the truck and help me walk. And we get up to the fire dome, and it's kind of blurry at this point, but something happened to the three of us where they threw me back in the truck and they drove me home. And I remember getting home, walking upstairs, and at the upstairs on the second floor, right after you get to the top of the stairs and turn right, we had a computer there. And I get on the computer, and I'm starting to, now that I'm home, I'm starting to become myself again. But I feel this really red hot burning sensation on the back of my neck the entire time I'm on the computer. And I say, screw it, I'm going to bed. And I go to bed, and I see the cowboy in my room. And seeing the cowboy in my room helps me go to sleep. But I had weird dreams the entire night of a dark entity or a dark something messing with me in my dreams the entire night. But I was able to sleep. Like, I actually had a really good night's sleep. It was just images of this dark entity messing with me in my dreams. And I woke up the next morning and I was fine, as if nothing had happened the night before. But it was one of the, like, hands down, it was the creepiest, weirdest, most out of this world, most nobody can believe a word that came out of my mouth thing that ever happened to me. Because I've never, it's one thing to have a paranormal experience, but to actually see a completely different time frame. I don't know if the church was ever, I mean, there's fire damage to the church, but I can't say what I saw is what happened to the church. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know the history.
Yeah.
But to have it be normal 1 minute and then the next minute it's on fire, and I'm seeing a figure, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to believe it happened to me.
Well, so what could you see how the figure was dressed?
This is the sad thing about every physical ghost I ever see. It's always a shadow figure. The only thing that this thing was discernible about it was I could see a knife. It was an actual. See the reflection of the fire in the steel.
Really?
Yeah.
So was it Chris that you had gone with?
Yeah.
So what did he say afterwards? What did he tell you about his side of what he saw happening to you?
Well, it's funny because him and my then girlfriend at the time, they had nothing happen to them. They were walking around doing their little Druid or Wiccan practices. No offense to anyone who practices those religions.
Yeah.
But they were doing their thing, and they had nothing happen to them at all.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, what was their view of what happened to you? How did they get to the point where they thought they had to drag you to the truck? What was happening to them?
Well, they were walking on it. Okay, so they were both making a perimeter circle around the church, and they had happened to come around to where I was at the same time, and they both saw me kneeling on the ground. And to them, they said I was just staring blankly at the church, like just very glossy-eyed. And then they were like, "Hey, Jory, what are you doing?" And I wasn't communicating to them. And they kept saying, "Hey, Jory, are you okay? Jory." And I wasn't saying anything. So they immediately, from their religious beliefs and practices, knew right away something spiritually was going on with me. And they picked me up off the ground, and that's where I kind of got somewhat shocked back into reality, is when they lifted. And Chris was a big boy.
Yeah.
And he said even he had a hard time, like, getting me off the ground and dragging me to the truck. And my girlfriend at the time said that my eyes looked glossed over. Kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they were kind of like a grayish glossed overness. And when she was trying to talk to me, she said that there was words that were coming out of my mouth, but it was gibberish. Like, she couldn't understand a word I was saying. And they said that my whole demeanor was just like my body wouldn't leave the church. I was focused on the church. I wouldn't stop looking at the church. My body wouldn't, because I walked away from them at one point, and I felt myself walking away from them, and they had to grab me and restrain me, like buckle me into the chair. And then my girlfriend at the time went to the back seat and put her arms around me and restrained me in the seat. That's how much they had to keep me in the truck.
So were you afraid of this black? Did you think, was it, in your opinion, was it this black figure's intention to hurt you?
So here's the thing. Like, I don't know what was going on with me, because I couldn't feel, I could see that its intent was malice, because it was watching the fire almost as if it was the one that created it. That's at least the impression I got. But I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel fear, because I think it was just because I was just so drained. Like, it's kind of like when you're sick and you're at that point of sick where you're just kind of like, oh, I don't care. I just want to sleep.
Just take me.
That's how I felt. I just wasn't feeling anything. And even when it walked towards me with what I thought was malice intent, I just didn't feel anything. I don't know. I don't want to say I didn't care. I was just so drained. Like, even thinking about it right now, it just makes me feel so drained. But I could tell more than I could feel its intent. But I wasn't scared. I just didn't feel it at all. And did you feel like you were watching something that had happened in a different time, or? See, that's something that I've struggled with. I don't know if it was an image put into my head or if it was a time loop. Like, I saw something that happened, because traumatic events in history have a way of being able to replay itself. But I don't know. Like, I guess I'm lazy on my end for not doing research. I don't think, like, if someone were just to tell me, like, is it a yes or a no, I kind of feel like it was an image placed in my head of what this figure wanted to do with that church. Right. Because the way the church was on fire, unless a fire crew had gotten there at a really reasonable time, that thing would have burned down instantly. Well, yeah. So I feel like it was an image placed in my head of what that figure wanted to do to the people who practiced their religion at that church. Hmm. And it was showing me what it wanted to do, which once again leads me to believe that it makes me wonder also what went on that property to create an entity of that malice when that was a holy site. Right. So, yeah, could it be a time loop of something that did happen? It does have fire damage on it, but at the same time, without me actually knowing the history, I kind of feel like it was just an image placed in my head. But it was so weird to one moment be here in the now, and then the next, that fiery image of the church. Right. It's something that I've never experienced since, but it's definitely stuck with me for a long time. it messed me up a little bit, not gonna lie.
Right. Well, I can say that you never told me that story until what? I think until I started this channel 2 years ago. You didn't come home and tell me that story. You never did tell me that story.
Well, there was a part of me that thought I might have brought it home because of the burning sensation I felt on my neck later that night.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dreams that I was having, I was scared that, oh God, I've already made our haunted house worse now.
Right.
But nothing ever really changed from what we were already experiencing in that house. So I think now that we've told the Hat Ghost story, and now we're telling these stories, and maybe I did have a guardian in that bedroom that night. Because the very next day, the burning sensation was gone. It just felt like this dark cloud was over me the entire time after seeing that image, and then the next day it was just normal. Everything was fine.
Wow.
I mean, the memory of it still haunts me, but yeah.
Well, do you want to move on to the cemetery story?
Yes. Okay. So more local legends for you people.
And the local being the Casa Grande area, right?
Kind of, sorta. So there's a town I live in Pinal County, and the county seat is a town named Florence. And once upon a time, in the age of stagecoaches and rootin' tootin' cowboys, Florence was actually surrounded by little tinier towns. And this cemetery that I'm going to tell you about is actually a part of this ghost town that's now been engulfed by what is current day Florence. I don't remember the name of the cemetery. I can only tell you that its urban legend name is the Witch's Graveyard.
Oh,
and
okay. What I want to say about that is that if you look up this graveyard online, it says that there's a legend about where did this town go? That there had been a town there that's mentioned on the headstones, and it's no longer there, and there's no history about it.
Yeah,
so,
it was a small
some history or something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was a small town that was actually a border town of Florence back in the stagecoach days. I guess you could refer it to now as technically a ghost town, but you can't. It's weird because it's not even really like if you were to drive through it today, you would just assume it's a part of the town of Florence. You would have never known that it was actually its own town because it's not really a town. It's just some houses and a road and a cemetery. But when I looked up the history of it, once upon a time, I found out it was actually a ghost town that became a part of Florence once Florence started growing as a city itself.
Yeah, it says I can't remember what the town was, but it was something like Adamwood or Eldwood or something.
Adamsville?
Yeah,
Adamsville.
it says where
that's right.
Adamsville go.
Yeah, that's right. Adamsville. Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyway, so this was the cemetery for that town that disappeared.
Yes, and an interesting side note, there is a Confederate general buried at that particular gravesite.
The Confederate general.
Yeah, he did fight for the Confederate side in the Civil War, and then he went on to I do believe it was a territorial Senate seat here in Arizona. I could be wrong, but I believe once the Civil War was over, he went on to politics in the territory of Arizona.
Well, if you remember, there was actually a Civil War battle in that area of Arizona. They were on their way to California, and
it was a scout skirmish between the Union and the Confederates. Yep.
Yeah, so for those of you that did not know this, there was a Civil War battle, a Civil War skirmish in Arizona, which is an interesting tidbit, considering you would think that it would all been on the South, but no, they were in Arizona going to California.
It's not really talked about much because the focus is mostly on the skirmish between the North and the South, but the Civil War reached all the way to Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay.
Yeah.
That's what San Francisco, or Alcatraz itself, the island started off as, was a Civil War base.
Oh, see, I didn't know that either. That's interesting.
Before it was a prison. Actually, the prison was made out of what was the Civil War base.
Wow. That's
Yep.
pretty cool.
So just an interesting side note there.
And just a
history
jaunt
for you.
into history for you.
Yeah, just a little jaunt into history. Just keep in mind the Civil War wasn't just the North and the South, all right? Anyways, so I had heard of this cemetery through my now mother-in-law and my wife and her family, and they would go out there, and they had a Wiccan friend who would go out there and use.
What's it with you Wiccans?
It wasn't my friend. It was my wife's mom's friend. But he would go out there and he would use, I guess you could say magic, do magic practices in that cemetery. And they would go out there.
Black magic things, or like pulling a rabbit out of a hat?
Well, I can tell you it was not Las Vegas stage act magic, that's for sure.
Okay.
You weren't seeing David Copperfield and David Blaine out there doing magic shows in Adamsville, Arizona at a cemetery at night.
So no rabbits out of a hat then.
Well,
forget it. Going.
If he was doing rabbits out of a hat, he was doing it by himself because he was going out there alone.
Okay, well that's it. I'm not going.
There was claims from them of seeing blood dripping from gravestones. There's a tree on the property that is gated off because there's a cemetery plot there.
Yes.
And they, as in my mother-in-law and her party, would see eyes in this tree, and they called it the witch's tree.
I'm putting a picture up. I think. Let me ask Jeremy. Jeremy, did you put a picture up of this tiny little cemetery? Okay, so it's they're able to see what you're talking about right now.
Oh, okay. So they took me out there a couple times, and it's definitely spooky at night, but it's hard to take it serious because it's right next to a farmer's field. Mm-hmm. And then down the road is a high school, so there's a part of the creep factor that goes away when you're still around civilization, whereas the domes you're not.
Right.
So,
right.
The two stories I'm going to tell about this, and I'll try and make them quick, is with my wife and I were with a group of friends, and several paces away from this tree is a small little grove of trees that border the farmer's land. And myself, my wife, and a friend of ours at the time walked into this grove, and then he got brave and decided to walk into the trees. So my wife and I stopped in this little clearing, and we were talking, and we heard him walking back to us through the trees. So we were going to wait for him because it was dark, and then we were going to move on. And we were sitting there talking, and we were still hearing him make his way back to us. And finally, I was like, man, what's taking him so long? It's not that far of a walk. And from behind us, we hear his voice say, hey, guys, what are you doing still over here? And we turn around, and he's behind us. And we were like, where did you come from? And he was like, I went through those trees, and then I went around, came through that clearing over there, saw you guys were still over here, so I walked back to see what you were doing. And I was like, we just heard you coming back through these trees. And he was like, no. And of course, once he started talking to us, the movement stopped. So we got out of that situation real quick.
Right.
So I could be wrong. It may or may not be the same night. But once again, my wife and I were out there with a group of friends. And we walked to the other side of the cemetery away from everybody else because we were just kind of looking at the dates of when people passed, which in this cemetery, a lot of the dates are from the early to mid 1900s, with some dates being 2000s, but I think that's just old plots that were bought many, many years ago, and those people finally passed away.
Oh.
So we were looking at these, and my wife leans up into my ear, and she goes, "They don't like you." And by the way, in this story, good old Uncle Mike is there. Okay.
Oh, we brought Mike back. Oh
Good
my
old Uncle Mike
gosh.
is there, and we're there with her mom and her partner, and she goes, "They don't like you." And I turn around and I look at her and I go, "Oh, who doesn't like me?" And she looks at me and she goes, "What?" And I go, "Who doesn't like me?" And she goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, You just told me they don't like you." And she goes, "No, I didn't." And I go, "Yeah, you did." And she goes, "No, I didn't." And I go, "You leaned into my ear, used my shoulder to drag me down to your height, and whispered to me, 'They don't like you.'" And she goes, "No, I didn't." And I go, "Yes, you did." And she goes, "Stop messing with me. It's scary." And I'm like, "I'm not messing with you." And she, even to this day, refuses that ever happened.
Well, maybe she didn't happen for her.
Well,
Maybe she had
yeah,
like an experience like you had at the church.
that's very possible. Um, and it could not have been in her at all. It could have been something impersonating her. But I felt her lean into my ear, and I felt her weight push me down into her and whisper to me, "They don't like you."
But did you see her do it?
Technically, no.
Okay then.
But anyway, yeah.
So that's even worse.
Well, she was clinging to me and then whispered to me, so I figured it was her. So as the night progresses, she kind of starts to get how I was at the church. Like, she's very non-responsive. She's very eyes glazed over. And her mom and her partner are kind of, doing their own thing. But my uncle starts to notice that Kendra's not herself either. And we're able to convince Ella, her mom, and her partner Karen that we're going to leave. So we leave and we drive back into town. And as we're driving back into town, my wife starts looking at things like she's never seen them before, like streetlights. Like, she looks at streetlights like she's never seen it before. And when cars whiz by us, she looks at the cars like she's never seen a car before. And I'm looking at my Uncle Mike and I'm like, "Are you seeing this?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm seeing this." And I was able to look at her eyes at one point when she was looking at a street lamp. And at that point, her eyes were completely black.
Really?
Yeah. So we stop at a gas station before we go back to her house. And she's still completely non-responsive, just staring at everything like she's never seen it before. Like, just in awe of the lights and the movement and everything around her. And Mike and I are trying to talk to her, and she won't answer. So we get back to her house. I think we dropped Mike off somewhere, and
Probably
I
my
stayed
house.
probably at your house, and I stayed the night with her. And at one point, I had to get up and go to the bathroom, and I'm staying in the guest room. And as I walk out of the guest room, Kendra's room is on a second floor landing, and it was where her brother, and her mom slept. And I get out and I look up, and there's a shadow figure on the second floor landing in front of her bedroom. And as I walked out and I caught it in mid movement, and it walked down the hall and then turned right towards where her brother's room was. And I was like I was at this point, I'm so used to paranormal activity that happens to me in my life that I saw it happen, and I was like, oh, that poor girl brought it home. Oh, that sucks. And I used the restroom and went back to sleep.
Wow, what a hero.
What am I supposed to do? Like, am I going to go up there and pull an exorcist? Like, I don't have holy water. I don't have training. Like, what am I going to do? I see a black figure walking over the stair landing, and I'm like, oh, that sucks for them. But after that night, she was fine. So I'm assuming that it left her. Well, obviously it left her, but
Right.
it was weird to see her in that state of being. And I imagine that's probably what my friends saw with me after the church incident.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but to this day, she claims none of that happened. Like, she claims that she was fine on the car trip. She was fine at the cemetery. She was fine when she got home. She has no recollection of any of it happening.
Well, it's possible that she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, we are at 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Whoa.
Should we ask if anybody has any questions or comments? Do you want to do that right now?
Sure, fire away.
Okay. So, does anybody have any questions or comments? Or have you figured out what the demon is in my picture? And you're going to tell me it's a bunny in a hat? Let me know that too. In the meantime, I'm going to tell you that we have about 2 more podcasts left before we are going to be switching to Twitch. And I think that is going to be exciting. Producer Jeremy, will be able to do a lot more with the Twitch forum, and I think that's going to be really great. Then we will upload those podcasts to my YouTube channel as well for a while. And I want to say that next week, Rob is going to be my co-host. So we will be doing a UK podcast, so it will be earlier. I think that will be at 4 p.m. Central Time, and that would be 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and I believe that's 10 p.m. in the UK, so that people in the UK can get into bed, get cozy, and we're going to talk about urban legends and folklore, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. Also, I want to mention that I do have a Patreon account, and as always, that is not something that is you have to do. That is absolutely 100% voluntary. And if you do decide to go that route, I would appreciate that very much. For those of you who do not know, I am not a YouTube partner, again, for a while, until I get to 1,000 subscribers. And even then, YouTube is having such strict rules that it is very likely that my content will be flagged because the stories I write and oh my goodness, Jory.
Sorry.
Can sometimes have, violence. And also I tell true crime stories and true missing person stories, and those are automatically demonetized. You're not allowed to even talk about the news on YouTube anymore without being demonetized. So, I think that's going to be fun. In the meantime, if you are interested in going to my Patreon, the link will be put up. And as I said, that is never a requirement. And I don't think that anybody has any questions, Jory. So, do you want to say goodnight?
I do, but I also will throw out there that due to growing interest, I will be looking into restarting up my old YouTube channel. It's going to be a little bit more focused on comedy and video gaming, but I will also open up another solo YouTube channel that will focus on the paranormal aspect. dealing with the Exit Light podcasts. And I'll let you guys know when I can get that up and running. But that way you guys can have more information. When it comes to the paranormal, I'll tell paranormal stories. You can come to me with anything that you want to talk about paranormal. We can use the channel to lead up to Exit Light podcasts, blah, blah, blah. So just in the future, look towards that, and I'll let you all know when that's going to start.
I'm so glad you're going to do that. I think that that is a great forum for you to be in, and I look forward to that. Also, I have a Facebook page. It's an Exit Light Facebook page, and Maya can put the link to that. And Rob has a Facebook page, and it's called Paranormal and Supernatural World, and he keeps very, very busy on putting up lots of different topics on paranormal and supernatural news on his page, and he works on mine too. So all of those, if you guys would like to subscribe and get ready for Jory's new channel coming up, which will be very exciting. All right. Now is when I say thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for watching. I really cannot thank you enough for the support. I am seconds away from my 1,000 subscribers. And the more you guys like these videos, the more you guys ring that bell so that you'll be notified as soon as my content goes up, the more my page is recommended, the more people will see us. And that is good for our whole community. And I appreciate you guys very much. Good night, Jory. I had a great time. Thank you again for being my co-host.
Thank you for having me, and I had a good time too, and I will definitely be in the chats next week. If you guys have questions during the UK podcast, I will definitely try and lend a hand in that.
I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. I know they like talking to you. All right, everybody. Good night, and I will see you next Wednesday.